Okay, today's lesson is on lines and angles. You can see it's mostly about identifying certain angle pairs that we're going to be using in lessons to come here. So you can see I can identify corresponding angles and then alternate interior or alternate exterior angles. And then we also have same side interior or same side exterior angles. So to define these angles, we first need to define a word called a transversal. And a transversal is a line that intersects two other lines in distinct points. So for example, if I have two lines, I could say this pink line right here, this is the transversal. It intersects two lines here and here in two distinct points. So it's just simply a line that intersects two other lines in a couple of points. All right, so the first pair of angles we're going to talk about have to do with two lines and a transversal, and they're called corresponding angles. So let's look at a picture first. Let's have two lines. Let's put the transversal in. I'll put it in color. All right, let's draw it like that. So here's the 2 points of intersection. Corresponding angles are angles that lie in the same position, in corresponding positions, thus the name. So for example, if I were to choose this angle up here, I would say that in this point with these intersections, that's sort of the top left corner. So if I come down here, I'd want to find the top left corner. That would be this position right here. So I'm going to say it is a pair of angles formed by two lines and a transversal such that one is between the lines and one is outside the lines and in the same position at each vertex. So here's a vertex. This is the top left. Notice it's outside the lines. This one is in the top left corner of those 4 angles, and it's in between the lines. So we have one that is between the lines, one that is outside the lines, but they're in the same position at each vertex. All right, we have alternate interior angles. So again, let's draw 2 lines and a transversal. And let's mark those distinct intersection points. Alternate interior. Focus on that word interior. Interior means we have to be in the interior of the 2 lines. So I have to be in between the purple lines. And alternate means on alternate sides of the transversal. So we want one at each vertex. So if I put this one here to the right of the transversal, I have to come down here. I have to be between the lines and I have to be on the other side of the transversal. So again, a pair of angles formed by 2 lines and a transversal such that both lie between the lines and on opposite sides of the transversal. Okay? We're not really going to be writing out these definitions, but you are going to be needing to identify them. Alternate exterior, you can probably guess what this is now. So if I have 2 lines and a transversal, all right, here's my intersection points, one right here and one right here. If I focus on this word exterior, that means I want to be outside the lines. So on the outside of this line and on the outside of this line. And alternate means on alternate sides of the transversal. So if I pick the left side of this pink transversal, I want to be outside the lines and I want to be on the opposite side of the transversal. So these would be alternate exterior. Exterior again because it's outside the lines, alternate because it's on opposite sides of the transversal. So similarly to the one we wrote above, a pair of angles formed by two lines and a transversal such that both lie outside the lines and are on opposite sides of the transversal. All right. Same side interior angles. So once again, give yourself some lines here. There's my two lines. Here's my transversal. Let's find my two intersection points. I made that kind of thick there. All right. Interior means we have to be between the lines, but this time instead of alternate, we have same side. So I'm talking about these two angles. They are on the same side of the transversal. Interior, they are between the purple lines. Okay, so a pair of angles formed by two lines and a transversal such that both lie, this time we want between the lines, and are on the same side of the transversal. All right, I bet you can guess what this last one is. I have two lines. We have a transversal. There's my intersection points. Exterior means I need to be on the outsides of the lines. That would be here and here on the top and on the bottom. And I need same side. So if I choose this guy right here, I have to go on the same side and on the outside of the lines. That would be that angle right there. So a pair of angles formed by two lines and a transversal such that both lie outside the lines, that's the exterior part, and are on the same side of the transversal. So a lot of vocabulary, right? But you definitely see some that kind of go together here. The same side interior, same side exterior. Now for same side exterior, we could have chosen these two right here. For same side interior, I could have chosen these two angles here. Right? Alternate exterior, I could have also chosen these. Right? I didn't mark those. For alternate interior, I could have also chosen this pair. All right, corresponding, I have a lot of choices. I could have chosen the upper right angles. I could have chosen the lower lefts or the lower rights. So just because I marked a particular pair doesn't mean there aren't other ones in that diagram. So let's see if we can actually pick some out. Let's turn the page. All right. Get this on the screen here. We have a diagram. I say name the transversal, right? So hopefully you can tell it's this line that cuts through the other two. It's P. And just so we can keep it straight, I'm going to mark it in pink again so we know that that's our transversal. These are my intersection points. Name all pairs of corresponding angles. Now remember, those are the ones that are in the same position. So if I choose A up at this vertex, A is the top left. So if I pick the top left, I would also be picking E. If I pick B, that's the top right one up here. So the top right one in its corresponding position is F. C up here is the lower left angle, so down here the lower left angle is G. And finally, the lower right angle goes with the lower right angle, that would be D and H. Those are all corresponding pairs of angles, so we actually had 4 of them on those set of lines. Alternate interior. So remember, interior means they have to lie between the two lines. So we're really only looking at C, D, E, and F. And for this one, we want alternate. So we want on opposite sides of the pink line. So if I choose C, I go down to the other vertex, I have to choose F because it's on the opposite side of the pink line. If I would have chosen D, that would be alternate interior with E. So let's write those down. C goes with F, and D goes with E. Similarly, if I'm doing alternate exterior, I'm going to ignore all this stuff in the middle, and I'm only going to look outside the line. So I'd be focusing on A and B, and G and H. Alternate, so A would go with H, opposite sides of the transversal, and B would go with G. They are outside the lines and on opposite sides of my pink transversal. Same side interiors, so we're back to just looking at C, D, E, and F, but if I want same side, C would go with E and D would go with F. So C and E, D and F. And then similarly, same side exteriors, we're blocking out this middle portion. So I'm only looking at A and B and G and H because those are on the exterior or outside. Same side means A would go with G and B would go with H. Okay, so again, think about those targets. It's all about being able to see a diagram and identify these pairs. So here's a couple of clues, right? Name the type of angle shown in each letter. If I were to extend these lines, it might help you, right? Here you can see one is between the lines and one is outside the lines. Notice this is the lower right corner and this is the lower right corner. Those are corresponding angles, right? And if I trace those angles, if I do this and I trace them, notice you see the letter F. So that's kind of a clue. If you're working in your diagram and you're having a hard time picturing what the angles are, if you trace them both and it makes a letter F, even if it's upside down or sideways, those are corresponding angles. Similarly, hopefully you can see if I extend the lines here, this would be my transversal. These are between the lines, right? So if I think of this as my transversal right here, these are inside the lines, these two angles. They're in the interior and they're on alternate sides of the transversal. So those are alternate interior angles. And if I were to trace the angles, I trace that angle and then I trace this angle, you can see we get the letter Z, or if you're looking at it sideways, maybe an N, right? We could also think of it, if you can get a Z or an N, you know you've got alternate interiors. Finally, the last trick, right? If I extend these lines, hopefully you can see it. These two angles are between the two lines and they're on the same side of this transversal. All right, if this is the transversal, they're both on the right side. If I just trace the two angles, I trace that angle, I trace this angle, you can see we have a letter C. Those were same side interior angles. And again, we're focused on that letter C. Okay, it could be a U also if you're looking at it sideways, it could be a U. All right, in this problem down below here, we're going to see if we can identify the transversal and then identify each angle pair. So I'm looking at angle 1 right here. Let's do that. I'm going to trace angle 1 and then I'm going to trace angle 2. I don't want to look at any other part of this diagram, so I'm going to cover the rest of that up. If you look at angle 1 and angle 2, it's a little skewed, but it should kind of look like, hopefully you can see an F. We have a stick with two pieces coming out of it. This is the top left by this vertex. By this vertex, this is the top left. So my transversal is N, and 1 and 2 are both the top left angles, so those are corresponding angles. All right, so now let's take a look at 3 and 2. Let's see if I can use a different color here. All right, I've got 3 and I've got 2. Those are the two angles. Hopefully you can see if I connect these two, there's your transversal right there. That's M. So M is the one that cuts through both. All right, so if M is the transversal, the two lines are N and P. So I'm not looking at this part of the diagram right now. Here's my two lines and my transversal, 2 and 3. Well, they lie on the outside of the lines, so they're on the outside of N and P, and they are on opposite sides of this transversal M. So those would be alternate exterior angles. 4 and 2, all right, getting a little crazy with the colors here. Here's 4 and here's 2. You can see they connect right here, so this has to be my transversal. So my transversal again is N. So let's cover up this bottom part of the picture. What are 4 and 2? Well, this is my transversal, so these are my two lines. They lie inside the two lines. This is the line and this is the line, so they're inside, and if N is my transversal, they are on opposite sides of the transversal, so those are alternate interior angles. Finally, we have 4 and 5. I don't know if we'll be able to see this with any more color here. Right? I have 4 right here and 5 right here, so they're connected here. So this is my transversal. That would be P. All right? So if this is my transversal and these are the lines, let's cover up this part of the picture. Right? I hope you can see that if these are my lines, 4 and 5 lie inside the two lines. Again, this is a line and this is the line and this is my transversal. So they're inside the lines and they're on the same side of this transversal. So those would be same side interior angles. Okay? The more complicated the diagram, the harder it is to pick these out. That's why we're spending a whole day just practicing identifying. All right, let's try this last page. It says name a pair of alternate interior angles. So if you look back to the last page, alternate interior looks for the letter Z. All right, so alternate interior here, I'm looking for a Z. So I can find a Z. I can find a backwards Z like this. If I find that backwards Z, I can see my alternate interior angles would be 2 and 5 would be a good pair. Corresponding angles, if you remember and you look to the left in your notes booklet, corresponding angles make an F. So can you find an F in here? I'm finding it upside down, F, like this, right? So my corresponding angles, top right is number 1, top right is number 4. 1 and 4. Okay, this is going to take some practice. This can be a little weird. Alternate interior angles. I've given you a whole lot of options here. Again, alternate interior, I'm looking for a Z. So the obvious one I think is probably something like this Z right here. All right, where are the angles for those? This 9 is made by the orange lines, as is this 4. So that's one option. You could have traced the Z sideways, so I could have gone like this and gotten 3 and 10. I could have gone this way and made kind of a weird shaped Z and gotten 1 and 6 or 2 and 5. I could have set 8 and 11 or 7 and 12. So you actually had a lot of options there. We need alternate exterior angles. Right? I didn't give you a letter for these. All right. Look here, if you look at these two lines, and if you think of this as the transversal, all right, and extend these lines out, exterior, I need to be on the outsides of these lines. So here and here, my intersection points are here and here. So I need to be outside these lines at these intersection points and on opposite sides of this transversal. So 5 and 8 are great examples of alternate exterior angles. There are others in that picture as well. All right, alternate interior angles, look for that Z, right? I see one right here. Right? Specifically look for the angles caught up in the Z. Don't say 4 and 5. The angles caught up in the Z are 3 and 6. Alternate exterior angles, we'll look at that same location, right? Let's go back to these lines and this transversal, but now you're not looking between the lines. You're looking outside the lines and on opposite sides of the transversal. 4 and 5 are really nice examples of those. Again, here's your two lines. They lie on the outside of the lines and they're off of the same transversal, which would be this segment. 4 is above it, 5's below it. All right, last ones here. I know this is getting long. Name the pair of lines and transversal for which angles 1 and 2 are alternate interior. So let's trace them. Here's angle 1. Here's angle 2, right? Hopefully you can see the Z. So these would be my two lines and this would be my transversal. So my lines are AB and DC. And my transversal is this segment, which is AC. All right, name another pair of alternate interior angles along with the pair of lines and transversal. All right, so how about I choose these two lines and this transversal. I see the Z, look for the angles made by the orange. That would be 3 and this angle 5. So I could say angle 3 and angle 5, and those would be with lines AD and line BC, and the transversal for that one would be AC. Okay, that's it for this lesson.